Hello and welcome to the Philippines. I'm optimistic about the Philippines going forward, but there are some challenges you should know about. More and more people are coming here to visit, to work, and to retire here, and the Philippines government and people are very accepting of that. Filipinos and the government are very welcoming in general of tourists and retirees here. The rules, the regulations, the laws, and customs are different here than in your home country, of course. You need to be renewing your visa on a regular basis, depending upon what type of visa you have. You can often renew it at 1 month, 2 months, and later at 6 months intervals, depending upon, there again, the visa type. If you don't renew those on time, you will be penalized. And also, if you're in the country after 6 months, longer than 6 months, you need to do an exit interview with immigration where they just basically check, make sure that you're not in debt to anybody, you're not in trouble with the law, that type of thing, before you're allowed to leave. And you need to do that a couple weeks before you plan on leaving. There's also an exit fee that you pay to leave when you leave the Philippines. Relatively small. I think I paid 700 pesos, or about $14 last time. One custom that is also part of other Asian cultures is that of saving face. Basically means that confrontation is frowned upon, especially if it's in a public place. Arguments, disagreements, that type of thing should be handled in a calm, reasonable manner. If you start a confrontation, an argument, you're probably just going to make matters worse. Saving face means just that. If a person feels insulted, the outcome could be much worse than if you would try to handle it much more diplomatically. Number two, the English language can be a challenge here in the Philippines. One of the major advantages of the Philippines is that many people do speak English, but the fact is that they speak it to varying degrees. Some speak better English than many do in the USA, different parts of the USA. If you go to different areas of the USA, you get different accents. If you go to England, if you go to Australia, people speak a different type of English, use different words, different terminology. It's amazing that so many people here speak three different languages. They speak Filipino, basically Tagalog. They speak their local language here in the Visayas, like on Cebu. It's Bisaya, or sometimes called Cebuano as well. And they speak English. And some people have told me they're more comfortable with English than they are with Filipino. And other people have a difficult time with English because they just don't use it. They learn it at an early age, but it's not used in their family. They're not in a workplace where they have to use it. The grammar and pronunciation is often different here. For instance, even Spanish, I know a little Spanish, and their word order is different in their grammar. Here I have a friend that will often say, "Funny you are," instead of "you are funny." And that's natural for them to say that type of thing. Also, pronunciation. I often get confused. Somebody will say, for fan, they'll say fun. For instead of map, they will say mop. Do you have a mop? I don't have a mop. So it can take a little while to get used to it. I can usually communicate with most of the people here, and but I've even started leaving some words out of my sentences. Very traffic is a very common term out here as you're traveling. Also, recently a lady was showing me a condo unit, and I could tell she wasn't from Cebu. Her cadence and how she spoke was just different. Didn't sound like what I normally hear. And I asked her where she was from, and she's from Iloilo area, Iloilo City area, where they primarily speak Ilonggo. And she had learned Bisaya, and but her her cadence, the way that she speaks, her accent is a little bit different than the regular Cebuano. Yeah, of course, it's always a good idea to learn some of the local language if you can, either Filipino, which is basically Tagalog and other languages mixed together, the local language wherever you're going to be staying or living. And if you know a little bit, it goes a long ways a lot of times. Number three, this is primarily a cash society. Now, most of your stores and your malls will take credit cards, but not all of them. And sometimes, in fact, they got to go to a different business to get the credit card processed. If you carry, these are the Philippine bills and coins. If you hand somebody 1,000, which is about 20 US dollars, or a 500, about 10 US dollars, they'll often ask you if you have a smaller bill because they don't have very much change. My friend the other day, excuse me, handed a taxi driver a 100 peso bill, about $2, for a taxi ride that I think cost him about 75. And the taxi driver said, "I don't have any change." So then it's best, unless you're going to tip somebody, to have the correct change. And believe me, it's a constant battle trying to have enough of that small change on hand. And you make it a point of going someplace, going to a 7-Eleven or a larger store, and buying something small just so you can get some smaller bills. Brownouts or blackouts, they like to call them brownouts here, can be very inconvenient, especially on very hot days. This happened at a Ayala Metro grocery store, I believe, one Sunday, and the electric was out, and took them quite a while to get the backup generator going, actually. I've been in 4 condos here in Cebu City in the last 2.5 years, and 2 of my condos had backup generators that handled all the units plus all the public areas. 2 of the units I stayed in, their backup generators only handled the public areas. It wasn't enough to run your air conditioner. So then one has to decide if you're going to leave. If it gets too hot, you're going to go to a mall at that point in time. If there is a mall where you're at, depends on what part of the country you live in, if you're in the country, in the city, what part of the city. Different parts of the city have more blackouts, brownouts. Anyway, it can be frustrating. If I lived in the province, out in the country, I would definitely have my own backup generator. I know some people who have installed solar cells and battery packs, larger battery packs in series to handle issues like that. My power has been out for 8 hours, I think a couple times. It was planned, so I knew ahead of time where they were changing some electrical maintenance items in one of the condos I lived in. Or you might just go to the beach when this happens, if you live near a beach, or up into the mountains where it's a little bit cooler. Number 5, cellular and internet service is getting better, but it varies widely by area, even in the cities. You can be in areas where you have really good, strong, fast signal, and areas with very little or slow signals. And if you get in some beach areas or up into the mountain, there can be possibly no signal at all. So it's good to check the different sites, check with the companies that would supply the area that you might be staying in, and see what kind of coverage they have there. Not all resorts have Wi-Fi, I've found. I've also found the Wi-Fi at some hotels to be very good, and others just barely usable. It often depends on how many people are using it at any given time in that area as well. Your overall comfort here can be challenged at times. The malls are often pretty well they're air conditioned. Some of the malls have good facilities. They call bathrooms, toilets, they call them CRs here, comfort rooms. And many of them do not have toilet paper or toilet tissue. They do not have soap dispensers, or if they have soap dispensers, my experience is that they're often out of soap, or it's very watered down soap, and they don't have paper towels. And if they have an air dryer to dry your hand, uh, about more than 50% of the time that air dryer is not working, so, or it's placed in such a place that it's right in front of a sink that other people are using, and you couldn't use it anyway unless you stood there a long time and waited for them to finish. Another area of personal comfort, of course, is air conditioning, and most of the new bigger malls have very good air conditioning. But you'll find oftentimes you go into a hotel building, you're expecting to get a blast of that cold air conditioned air. And quite oftentimes, there's very little air conditioning in the lobbies of these hotel rooms or condos. You step into the elevator hoping to get a blast of cold air, and that's hot air there. You get off the elevator and you're hoping to get another blast of cold air, and there's hot air in the hallways. And until you get in your room or your condo and you turn your air on, that's the first air conditioning that you receive when you're checking in many places here. So be aware of that. Pollution and population kind of go hand in hand. Manila itself is one of the most densely populated cities in the world. I think the metropolitan area has about 32, 34 million people in it. I think that's pretty close to the population of California. I think Cebu City, where I'm at, is about 3 million, right around 3 million. I see lots of different figures. Um, there's about 104, 106 million people in the Philippines. The land area is about the same size as the land area of the state of Arizona or Nevada. And each of them, I think Arizona has just about 7 million people. So that huge number of people in relatively small space. And you get a lot of pollution. You get garbage that has to be dealt with. You get sewage that has to be dealt with. You have water pollution. Um, you have noise pollution, of course. The horns, the chickens, the dogs, the karaoke, the people making so much noise. Sometimes you just want to get up into the mountains. You want to get away from some of it. But that's something to deal with. I've had the same issues in cities, big and small, in the USA as well. I've lived in high-end condos that supposedly were soundproof, had soundproof walls, and I could hear my neighbor's phone ring. I could hear their alarm go off. I could hear the traffic, but generally the doors and windows are better sealed, much better sealed than they are here. The good news is that they're taking steps to clean up. They're trying to get rid of the older, very polluting jeepneys. They've got a big build infrastructure in the works where they're building additional water treatment plants and that type of thing. They've shut down some resort areas to do a major cleanup area where the sewer has been going right out into the sea. And so finally, we're making progress in those areas. Number 8, and I've had lots of experience with this frustration. You're looking for something that you want or that you need, for instance, coffee filters, and every place you go, they tell you, first of all, they can't find where they're supposed to be. Secondly, when they find a spot they think they should be and they can't find them, the answer is always out of stock, sir. And probably meant they never had them in the first place. But out of stock is something that can become very frustrating, especially when you need something, much less when you want something. It might be a certain type of pill that you want from a pharmacy. It might be other electronic type adapters that you want, and then you have to go online and order them, and then it might take a week or 2 or 3 to get it. Inventory control needs a big improvement here in the Philippines, and it all goes back to management, in my opinion. They're not training. Now they're not trained and not training the proper people to do inventory control. So if you have favorite pills, vitamins, different types of things that you want to bring with you, bring them with you rather than trying to find them here, I would say. You may find transportation and traffic here to be a little bit challenging. Um, Manila, I've only landed and taken off from there, but I've talked to many people who have lived there, and they tell me the stories about the traffic. Of course, you can watch the news and see it every day, the terrible long and congested traffic. They're slowly building the traffic infrastructure there and other places. There are plans here in Cebu City to put a bypass and eventually even to put in some light rail type things. There's additional bridges and rail that are in the planning stages or even started to being built on various different islands. So they're going in the right direction, but you'll find that traffic laws are not enforced like they are in many countries. And some of the traffic gets a little crazy with the motorbikes, the hobble hobble drivers going in and out of traffic. Lane lines are just a suggestion oftentimes. And it can be a little nerve wracking if you're adverse to that type of thing. Number 10, poverty and crime can be a challenge. Most of the crime here against foreigners is of the pickpocket nature, so keep your items secure. I recommend some type of secure wallet, body wallet, belt wallet, whatever you use. There is a growing middle class, and you look at the people in the malls, you look at the people with cars, you look at the people who are buying condos and houses. So there is a growing middle class, and statistics back that up. But still, with over 100 million people here, there are huge numbers of very poor people. It is a society that is family-oriented in general, and families try to take care of each other. There are millions and millions of Filipinos working overseas and sending billions of dollars, billions of pesos back here to the Philippines to their families. And that's a huge part of the economy here in the Philippines. I had a longer list, but I'm going to keep it at 10 there. And I find that the Filipino people in the 2.5 years that I've visited here, I find that they offer so much friendliness and they're so helpful that for all the challenges and sometimes frustrations, it gives me many, many, many reasons to stay here. I'm very comfortable in this culture, and I'm optimistic about the future of the Philippines. There will continue to be poverty, there will continue to be corruption, there will continue to be other issues, as there is all over the world. But they're going in the right direction. At least they're solving some of those problems, making some things better. The middle class is growing. Anyway, thank you for coming along. Please like, please share the video, please subscribe. Safe travels to you all wherever you're at, and we'll see you next time.